Hello guys, and welcome to the next tutorial in which we will talk about variables. Okay, and as you noticed, I already started the new program, and I won't be creating the new program every time. I'm just gonna start um, or continue from the previous one. In this case, I started the new one, but I won't be showing you because I already showed you in previous videos. So basically, if you see right here, this is the name of the program that I created. Okay, so from now on, you can call your own um, program names, or you just gonna see what I named it and then you can create your own. Okay, but I'm gonna just go ahead and jump into the tutorials from now on, and this is gonna be the tutorials, and we're gonna talk about variables. Okay, and variables are something that you're already familiar with in math and other subjects. Variable is basically kind of like a container that can be changed values, or like an item that can be changed. So if you remember from the math, we would do something like x plus y equals z, right? So these are all variables, so we can change them all and things like that, right? So in C sharp, we basically can't do that just like that. We need to tell the program what we're gonna do, what they are, and there's a proper way to use them, okay? And we're gonna be using them a lot in almost every single program. So let's figure out how we're gonna do it. So before we even make a variable x or y or z, we need to say to C sharp what kind it's gonna be. So we're gonna talk about different kinds of variables in the next tutorial. For now, we're just gonna use integer, a simple way, or a simple number. I guess that's just a simple number. And what we do is it's called integer, and this is how you say int integer, and then now we can say x. Okay, and we just put semicolon in the end, and believe it or not, this is a full understandable by C sharp code. If you highlight over squiggly line, it will tell you that it's just been declared, but it's never been used. What it means is that we declared it, the program will make a space somewhere in its memory, in the computer's memory, but we're not using it. So kind of, useless for now, obviously. Once we start using it, so what we can do later is we can say x equals 5, right? And don't forget the semicolon. And now, if you see, is that we can use the Rx. And if you notice, it is still has a squiggly line, and it's for the same reason. Even though we're still not using it. We assigned a number to it, but we're not using it. So what we can do is, you remember from the previous lesson when we actually typed something to our console, we can do the same thing. So what we're gonna do is we say console, and the way I do this is, if you notice, when I start typing, it's called IntelliSense, and it's a really great Visual Studio for it. Is when you start typing, all these options come up, right? And when you start typing, so let's say I know I'm gonna type right line, right? So when I start W, see, it gives me these little options, and when I scroll down, right line, and I hit tab, and it'll pop up in there. I open parentheses and it closes automatically. And in this case, instead of writing what we're gonna say, we're gonna put X in there. Okay? And then we go to the end, and don't forget your semicolon. And look at this. The squiggly line disappeared. We initialized it. We say x equals 5, and we put it into our console. So guess what's gonna happen when we press start, or as we learned, we're gonna do Control F5. Um, Look at this. It's 5. Okay, just like we thought. Okay, so what we did in here is we initialized. We say that our x is gonna be integer. Then we say x is gonna be 5, and then we wrote our x, which is in this case 5. So instead of printing 5, we printed the x, right, which is 5. So if we change this to 10, this is now gonna print 10. Okay, so next thing what I want to point out is that we can do this in the same line, okay? So this becomes a little more of a time saving. So what we can do is we can say x equals 10 in here and delete this line completely, okay? Okay, so now it's kind of same thing. Okay, basically we just save an extra line. Um, both way is fine. Some people do one way, some people another, but it's good practice to actually say what it is right away when we declare it. Okay. Um, what do you think is gonna happen if we, after this, we're gonna change our variable? What if we say x equals 20? Okay. Now, um, as you probably know, if we run this, we're gonna press 5 and we're still getting a 10. Okay. One thing good to mention here is that we're doing this after we print it out. So I just want to point it out that our program runs from top to bottom as we start. Remember, so it gets to the main, and this is our entry of our program, and it starts doing this, and then it does line after line after line. So when it gets to here, we printed it out, and then we get to here, it assigns 20. Okay, but it becomes after, not this. So if we do want here, what we can do is we can copy this line and put it in here, and guess what's gonna happen if we run it again? We're gonna see printed out twice, okay? And as you can see, it should. Okay, we get to this line, we printed out 10, we get to this line, we reassigned x to 20, and we print x again, which in this case is 20. Okay, so this is a simple way to do it. Now, one thing I want to mention is that naming your variables x is really bad, and you should never do that. Okay, as we're gonna be writing programs, our x is gonna be actual mean something, right? They're gonna mean either age, um, or a tax rate, or a number of people, or anything that our numbers or our variable will stand for. We should name our variables in such a way. Okay, one way that I want to say is when we create our variables and we use the names such as, let's say, tax rate, right? So this is a variable. Let's say we say it's gonna be 8%, right? So we'll name it 8, and obviously we have to say that it's an integer. Um, and This is a good way to do it, but what I want to say is that in the programming, between all the programmers, it's kind of unwritten rule, but when we create variables, we should initialize it in the camel case, okay? And that is basically what it is that the first character that we start is small, and then the other word in it, which is a rate, is going to be a capital. Okay, so this is actually the way that most programmers will do when we create our variables. Okay, and it's camel because it's kind of like humps on a camel, right? So if we had another one, tax rate, let's say it's in Ohio, right? So tax rate Ohio, right? So this is kind of like a camel, as you see, little humps. And as we add more to it, it will just continue the same way. And don't be afraid of using more words. Don't try to make them shorter, but try to make them shorter, but in the same way that we can understand. Because in your program, when you learn to write bigger and more complicated programs, there are going to be a lot of them, a lot of variables, and you're just going to get lost in them. So the better you name them, the better and easier it will be to understand the code for you and for others. Okay, so but if you think you're gonna type a lot of if you create longer, that's not true, because guess what happens when you start when you start typing it, right? So look at this. As soon as I put the T in there, it gives me an option right there, text rate. It understands, and then I can just press tab, and there it goes. I can use it right away. I don't have to retype it and make extra mistakes. That's why Visual Studio is great with this, okay? And one last thing that we're gonna talk about is basically the way we write our variables in a case-sensitive way. So let's say we uh, create one that's called age, right? And we say int age equals 5, right? Some kid's age, okay? Now, if we later in our code want to use age and we forget or say and we type age like this is wrong because this is a capital, okay? So age will not equal to actually corrected us because it's so smart. Um, so the age with capital A is not going to be in. If we change any letters, it will understand. Okay. Basically, another thing is that you cannot start your variables with numbers. Okay. It has to start with the character. Okay. So A through Z, and then in the end you can say age, you can say age 10. Okay, you can name them like this as well. Okay, so this is my code, and so go ahead and practice with them. In the next tutorial we will talk about different kinds of variables, and now we just talked about integer, but there's way more of them, and I will see you in next tutorial.